every moment tests you. Every action defines you. This is the Prestigious Initiative, where mindset becomes muscle and character becomes legacy. I'm Chris Bean, martial artist, coach, and relentless believer in growth. If you're here to sharpen your edge, lead with integrity, and build a life that echoes beyond your years, you're home. You can find the podcast on social media at PrestigiousPod. You can find me at Chris Bean Official, and the email for the podcast is prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com. This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today's guest is Stephen Werley, a former Army Ranger turned marketing strategist who's now helping sales teams with small business use AI to close more deals with less stress. Stephen has worked with over 6,500 business owners to build automation and discipline into sales system. Today in our conversation, we're going to cover why most businesses don't actually have a lead problem, how AI agents are transforming sales teams, and how to create sales revenue without losing that personal touch. Stephen's story blends military discipline with business innovation, and his lessons are going to bring in today's some very practical and actionable ways that are designed to help you stop working harder and start working smarter. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris.
So, Stephen, why would somebody want to listen to our conversation here today?
I can't tell, why anybody would not want to listen to it if they're in the sales world, right? Because right now we're so affected by AI in so many different ways that, my mission right now is just to AI enable as many salespeople as humanly possible. I know you've already covered the topic of AI in some detail on the show with insanely awesome insights that I loved listening to as well. I just think that we're at this point right now where wherever people are at in their careers, and for me specifically, that's talking to sales folks, we need to be ready and we need to be able to act and react in the right way and be able to harness the tools to help us do better, opposed to brushing them off and saying, well, AI can't do sales like I can, or, whatever the excuse is. I think we're just in that place in the world now where this is coming and everybody knows it and it's here. I mean, just be real. But I think we're just at that place now where AI needs to be taken seriously in multiple areas, including something as human as sales.
All right. Now, Stephen, you have a background as an Army Ranger. And now
Sure.
you're an AI-driven sales strategist. What type of journey led you there? And then what type of mindsets do you have that carry over from military into business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, growing up, I was a self-taught coder, and I actually went to college for computer science before I ever went into the military. The structured college experience for learning more code was not for me, to say the least. And I decided that I didn't want to go take a desk job at that point in time. I was also a student athlete. I was a runner. I was on the cross country and track team. And I decided that I wanted to go have some fun. So that's why I went into the military. So the military was almost the side quest versus everything else in a way. Now, with that said, just to continue answering your question, I was pretty driven on becoming or being in one of the spec ops units, and whatever that looked like. Long story short, I'm happy to get into that if you want to get into it. But long story short, it turned into Ranger Regiment in the Army. So, excuse me. There, I learned more about just how to act, how to be good leaders more than any area of my life. I will say I was definitely a fiery college student who thought of themselves higher than what they were, and thought that I should get respect for different reasons and whatnot. It's not that I guess I was the most crazy in that sense, but I think once you're put into a position like a spec ops unit in the military or any military, I'm limited, right, in my scope of view, because I went in, did basic training, went to selection, and airborne school in between. And from there on out, I was in regiment. So my entire experience is very little about what, everyone calls big army, because I was just in spec ops unit. What I'll say is the level of respect that you need to have for the guy next to you, the guy on top of you, and all of that really taught me a lot about how to treat people, but how to take ownership in everything that you do, and how to communicate, and just how to carry yourself as a human being with, good morals, integrity, all of that. So that was a huge learning curve for personal development, I'll say. It was a blast. I had amazing leaders during my time in, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Came out, took a job for like 2 months, which was a coding-based job from a friend helped me get that, who I had from college. And long story short, just didn't work out, right? I wasn't getting trained on anything, and it's been like multiple years removed from coding at this point. So it was like kind of a mutual decision, like this wasn't it. Shifted into the marketing business because I had experience with doing websites and stuff like that. Learned strategy, read a lot of books, took a lot of training, talked to a lot of mentors, learned that side of the business, which ultimately led me to a point where I enjoyed the sales side of doing my business so much. That's where I started to shift into. And I leaned into it, and eventually I became a sales agency owner for, creating and building external teams for different businesses that wanted to have not an internal team, or they just weren't quite at that point. Built a lot of systems around ops, and then that led to AI, because I found all of a sudden I was, running this whole new business that I didn't have systems for, and I didn't know how to run it in the best possible case. So I created these things out of necessity in order to help myself. And now what I do is I take those and I help other businesses, typically that have more internal type of teams, apply that into their business and be able to help them.
Okay.
Long story.
Well, yeah, no, that's great, because that brings everybody in. So how long have you been using AI to help you with the sales? And then I guess the underlying question there is, did you write or collaborate with members of your team to build AI specifically suited for this?
Okay, great questions. About 3 years, and the answer is no. And I'll tell you why. Why the answer is no for number 2. I collaborated with people who knew AI. Did I collaborate with team members? Did I get feedback from team members? Sure. Sales folks tend to be the least technical people on the face of the planet, which I've learned, which was a very difficult thing for me, because even though I don't code anymore or anything like that, I'm still a highly technical person, I believe, in terms of just, I can go into a software and learn it and use it. Meanwhile, I can't get a salesperson to mark whether somebody showed or not for a meeting. So it's, in terms of that, not so much. Now, getting feedback on what I was creating and how I was doing it, absolutely. And that process has changed drastically from the time I started building systems and seeing a lack of adoption within the teams to the point where it's at now, which is really minimize as much tech as possible, or just integrate it into the things that the sales folks like to do, and then have the rest of it kind of take care of itself. That's a huge piece. So,
okay. Now, you say that most businesses don't have a lead problem; they have a conversion problem. Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, I think most businesses that are somewhat successful, at this point, I'm not talking about necessarily like a brand new startup or something like that. They have a customer acquisition system in some way that exists. And obviously I'm working with organizations that rely on a sales base to their organization in some way. So with that said, if you just, take a look at whatever their engine is to bring people in from the marketing side, that exists. And even if it's just as simple as posting LinkedIn posts and getting people to, comment there or whatever it is, there is a source for somebody to go and find potential leads, right? So leads tend to not be the problem. They do tend to be blame for some business owners that hit a lull, that don't have the really in-depth structures put in place. When it comes to the actual sales side of it, I think and it really depends on industry here and mentality and who trained you. But a lot of people, you know, they either have one or two processes that I see. They'll hop on like a 2-call type of flow. Well, they'll hop on a short call, discovery call, and then maybe a secondary strategy call or something like that. Or they just try and do it all in one call. Regardless, a lot of people believe that that is the process, right? That's the sales process. And once we get off that, whatever the last call is, that's probably it. Now, if you're in a deeper industry, a more sophisticated industry like oil and gas or something, of course, the expectation is different in terms of how many calls you're getting. So just trying to, keep it consistent here. There's a lack of system, though, that happens from call to call or after what that expected last call is, because now there's an expectation where it's like, okay, we had everything. I answered your questions. Let's sign the agreement and let's move forward. And if that doesn't happen, what tends to happen is we just forget about it, right? And then we say we need more leads. And then we get put in this position where we could have had something that we likely lost just due to a lack of proper follow-up, proper understanding of, what somebody needed or what questions they had. And that's really where I think the real work of sales is done, and a successful salesperson acts in that area.
And okay, so the way that I'm hearing that is essentially they're out there, they're getting the leads, but they're reaching out to these people one or two times, and then they're just letting them sit there. And that means that they have no what's a constant contact marketing where they're contacting these
Follow-up
people
process.
right. They have no follow-up to these, whether that's a phone call, whether that's an email, whether that's a message or whatever it is. So because of that, that's where the AI can come in to kind of offload some of that work from the person to do that. And then that AI can maybe pass it back to the person if that lead is then ready to have the conversation again.
Right. Yeah. So you're hitting on a lot of really good points. The biggest gap that I noticed in terms of my available output as a leader of a sales agency was the follow-up loop and being able to communicate with the reps in a timely manner and review what they were doing in order to help them become more successful. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you talk to any type of sales manager, that's not only an expectation of their job, it's a large piece of it, but then also let's think about that. If we're always working on one-on-one scenarios within this, can we identify trends as a human? Sure, absolutely. But are we always analyzing all the trends? Are we only basing this off, some limited window of conversations that we hear? Because, if a rep has 5 conversations a day and you're managing 10 reps, no way are you listening to all of those. Not a chance. It's impossible. Even if you cut sleep out, it's not going to happen. So you get to the point where, at least I got to the point where I realized like there needs to be a better way to do this. And that was my first interaction with AI, was creating a custom GPT to review sales calls in the way that I review sales calls. Is it 100% as good as me? No, because we're working off a transcript. But does it notice things more consistently than I do? Yeah. So in some ways it's better than me. In some ways it's not. It's a heck of a lot faster than me. It can notice trends a heck of a lot faster than I can analyze trends. And then you can still analyze, calls. I'm not saying, this is a replacement for reviewing these things, but you can still analyze calls and, listen to them and see how the communication's happening and, how certain things go. I'm trying to think back to everything that you said in terms of leading into this and how I got here. But I think, moving from this step here into what needs to happen for, a rep is the fact that there's all this data. There's all these conversations that are happening, not just with one prospect, but with multiple prospects. And you get to the point where you start being incredibly subjective, not by choice, but just because of human nature, in terms of what actions you need to do as a salesperson when you don't have a scheduled call on your calendar. So you think about that call that you had yesterday that was decent, and you think that I'm going to hit this person up. But what happens if you had a full day of calls and you didn't have any chance to hit? What about that person that you had a great talk with last Thursday that just isn't in our head because we got home and it was complete chaos, or we, whatever, went into the other room out of our office, depending where you're at, and it's complete chaos. The kids are, everywhere. The wife's overwhelmed, or whatever, husband's overwhelmed, whatever it is. And you just forget about it, right? Even though the notes are in the CRM and all this stuff, the follow-up stage I is a graveyard typically. Like, it's just, you can typically scroll it forever. Whenever I go and analyze a new organization, they have a lot of people just sitting in the follow-up stage for a very long time, months and months and months, since the last communication too. And that's a problem of just, us being overwhelmed of where we can make a decision. So where I saw a huge need, and not even a need, a huge assistance that AI could help with, was keeping an eye on these things and having a track record of the conversations that are happening with each person, and a log of those conversations to help you decide in a more objective manner, well, this is the next action that needs to happen. This person said this here, this on this call, they're obviously missing this. So we have to create something of value here and send this to them so they can actually move forward in the sales process. So we're combining AI and humans to really take the think work out of what needs to happen, keep the human element in it, and drive that forward.
Okay. I really like the idea of taking the transcripts from the call, plugging that into AI, and then you already have the AI kind of set on whatever the parameters are. Hey, basically give me a grade on this call. Did I get an A, B, C, D? And then give me some tangible things I can do to improve for the next call. Like if this objection happened, where can I stem from? How can I overcome that objection in the best way to help to try to do that call? And then, if you can do that, okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. How do you keep let's say you said ChatGPT, how do you keep ChatGPT able to stay on that specific path and not deviate? Because we know that, after so many iterations or having so many of that same conversation, it starts to come up with different ways to do the thing that you programmed it very specifically to do. How do you combat that?
Yeah, so two almost separate type of ideas here, and like I said, it all started with a custom GPT. So for anyone listening along that hasn't done a lot of custom GPTs, you're almost always starting a new conversation with a custom GPT and doesn't have access to all the other conversations that you have. So everything's almost a narrow window unless you're going back to an existing conversation within that GPT to reference. This has obviously evolved over time. Now it's more about agentic uses, and I think that's what you were touching on. So, creating a open AI assistant to be able to analyze the calls. There's different ways to go about this, but you need a source of truth to your data and a way for AI to access this. So there's different possibilities in terms of doing this. Right now, I prefer to do that by having things synced up with an Airtable and having for anyone that doesn't know what Airtable is, it's basically a more robust version of Google Sheets in a way, and you can build different automations with it and have different dashboards and things of that nature. But basically, tracking things like, conversations and next action dates and things of that nature. So it can store the data, but it will also summarize each data point, and it will take, big points or potential follow-up actions from each different, conversation that happened. So that way, anytime that AI is going to go through and run everything, it can grab that information and be able to analyze it. You can also build this in uh, what's called a RAG type of database, which is essentially a way to feed AI information in in a structure that it really likes, to just speak as non-technical as humanly possible here. It just gets the information the way it likes, and basically adds on to the knowledge of the LLM. So that's what a RAG database would do, and that's useful too. The biggest issue I have with that is that's more of like a search and find instead, which is totally, it's amazing for certain use cases. It's just in this use case, and also I'm sure there's people who are smarter at RAG than I am, so I could be off base here too. And I'm happy if anyone has a solution for this that thinks they're better. I find it smarter to have actually just feed AI what I need it to look at, and then have it be able to do that. So now, if you're doing a lot of conversation, like if you have your own private type of conversation window, that's where RAG's going to be super useful. And that's what I believe a lot of the apps that we're using that have AI enabled within it now, when we ask it about, if we track our food and we want to be like, oh, well, how did we do yesterday and eating stuff? Well, it's just analyzing stuff from a database of what you're doing, and then it can communicate that with you via text chat. So that can be super useful. But
and of course, as you're doing that, so one of the things I do for the podcast here is I take the transcript, I send that to ChatGPT that I've prompted to do this a specific way. I say, hey, give me a grade on this episode. Where did I do good? Where did I hit the mark? Where did I miss the mark? What can I do to improve? And what that's been, at least for me, is I use that kind of like a coach. Okay, these are the things I could do better. These are what I did good on. And I have a little bit of information as I can move forward. I imagine your sales team is doing that as well. So the next piece is, you talk about the follow-up system is missing for so many different people, so many different businesses, which is a huge problem, as you know.
Yeah.
It's not just that the time isn't there to do it. The system isn't in place to be able to track those things appropriately. So then, is a different or more robust CRM one solution to do that? Because I know there are lots of different variances of CRMs to do this, and you can do different tag-based systems, and the tags can have automations that follow up with hey, this person hasn't been contacted in X long, and all of those things. So is some of that AI offloading into a better CRM usage? Do you understand where I'm coming at from that?
I get where you're coming at. I say I don't think there's a wrong answer here or right answer, right? I think that's the thing. I think you have to do whatever you're comfortable with whatever you have available to you in terms of personnel and what technology makes sense. Now, shifting a CRM is typically a huge undertaking, so is it necessary? I don't know. I think this goes back to what I was saying about how my systems evolved over time, and what I will say, and what I personally have seen within sales teams is, one, if you shift to CRM, it's tough because salespeople are not technically adept. So that's our thing. I prefer at this point to just build things on top of what they're doing. So if we just take, what I've set up until this point, using things like Airtable, and let's just say you're using, HubSpot or Go High Level or Salesforce as your CRM. I think those are the three that most people are using. Some people are using Close now, which is a newer CRM. Whatever it is, that data can be synced via third-party tool like, Make or, Zapier or N8N if you want to get into something like that. And if you have that stuff properly synced, which isn't terribly hard to do, you can probably hire a VA to do something like that, the syncing aspect of it at least. From that point, now you have your data living in a place where there's a truth aspect to it, and now we can choose what we do with that data. What did I used to do with that data? Well, I used to make people go into a different system, and I used to make them manage their deals in a different way, and it would give better dashboards, and it would automate uh, the coaching of the call and things like that. And some of that stuff is still automated in the way I do it, right? But now it's different, right? So instead of making them add this new system into what they're doing, and then most teams are using something like Slack. And if you're not using Slack, you're probably using, Microsoft Teams, which is very similar to Slack. Well, if we have all the data living somewhere and it's already there, we can just basically send a message into Slack directly to the sales rep of being like, we need to send this email. This is the draft for it. Is it good to go, or do you want to make edits? Right. and that's where I found that these things almost need to live for sales teams, because when we try to add more onto their plate, it gets harder. This actually removes the layers from them. It removes layers of shifting deals around or things like that. And you can have, these things be relatively automated to an extent to send to a sales rep, be like, these are the main action items today for, deals that you need to do to move them forward. So really, every deal in my mind needs to have a next action item and a next action date if it's an open deal. So next action item and next action date. And if each deal has that, now we're not going to be, and listen, you could do this manually. You could do this without AI. So if you're just not ready or you're not there and you want to test something with your sales team to see if they can become better after every single deal, if they are doing stuff in the CRM, create those two fields, next action item, next action date. And if you put those in there and they follow them, you're going to see a lift on your sales. I can basically guarantee it, as long as there's some volume of deals coming through and prospects coming through your door. That's essential to a team that most teams just don't have. They're doing things like you say, is some of the more robust organizations that have some built out systems. However, it's still not insanely customized. I mean, it might be to an extent, it might be able to pull like an objection or something like that, but it's not insanely customized. And that's where we're at with the power of AI, because AI can look at those calls and can find those objections that we might be missing, that we're not really listening to, or maybe we did hear them, but AI still finds them and knows that, well, we need to build something specifically for them that addresses this, or they have to see how this would work. Well, we can, basically ask what it wants to build or what we need to build or show them. And we can, go onto something like Gamma at this point and build like a web page that literally directly addresses their need, that has all their, company branding on it and stuff like that pretty quickly and easily, and send that over to them to look at. Might have a link directly to the DocuSign or whatever you need. So like I'm still very pro on human in the loop here and things of that nature. Is that going to change over the next couple of years? Possibly. I don't know. I don't think humans are ready to be totally sold by AI at this point. Outside of just ordering from a kiosk at McDonald's, which tons of people, hate to do anyways. So, is it business folks like doing a B2B deal with an AI? I don't know. I don't know how far out we are from that. I'm not going to speculate, but can we use AI to help make us better and augment what we're doing? Absolutely. And we should be. And there's no shame in that at all. And, at the end of the day, and your last live episode, I forget the gentleman's name that you yeah. And you had another episode with him in the past. It comes down to the point of a human being able to like look at, big ideas and trends and things like that, right? So while AI can help analyze some of those things, you still have you're on the ground level, right? You've been having these conversations for, years likely, so you know what you need to do in order to move it forward.
Okay, so Stephen, what are some common mistakes that you see sales team making with their follow-up pipeline management? And even, let's say we include AI into some potential solves for this. You talked about already having a next action and then that item and then the date for that item. I think that is
Mhm.
super helpful because then what that does is that like it circles back to what gets measured gets managed. And so if you're measuring those things, if you're tracking those things, then you're going to be more apt to follow up on those just because you're measuring those. So what are some other common mistakes that you see people making?
Well, what I see a lot of teams doing is two things. One, they just use things like Google Sheets to track their data without like a true source of truth into it, like a rep inputs numbers of the calls they had and the follow-ups they had and how much deals get collected. And that's a very popular thing in what I call the high ticket industries, the high ticket sales world. Um, with a lot of these external teams and things of that nature. That's an issue that I see just because the data isn't very reliable. And also, it's not linked up with the CRM in any sort of way. And there's a lot of promises behind those sheets. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea of what they're trying to accomplish. I just think there's better ways to do it and make sure the data is actually truthful. So that's one issue that I see is just the way that data is being put in. And this does come down to a fact that a sales rep is willing to go into a Google Sheet and say that I had 5 calls scheduled today. I had 3 live calls. I closed 1 deal, and this is the amount of cash I collected today, right? Like they're fine doing that because they also know that's how they're going to track their commissions and everything like that too. So part of the reason that was created, I believe, was for simplicity. There's obviously people want to see data and they didn't have a good way to see data before. And instead of, creating something for each CRM, if you do it within Google Sheets, well, now we eliminate the need for somebody to worry about what CRM they're using, right? So I don't think it comes from a bad place, but I do see it as a long-term scaling issue that is hard to shift away from. And it's hard to eventually migrate the data out of there because it's not trustworthy and it's all a mess. And everything relies on these very complex like type of formulas that all the cells are using and interacting between different pages and sheets. And I think, if you break it once, even if you're skilled, when you have 10 different tabs and there's these formulas, it's nearly impossible to try and figure out what went wrong there. So that's one thing. The other thing that I find a huge issue on is the fact that problem just gets largely ignored in terms of the tracking and the CRM stuff. When I first started using a sales agency, I learned that reps a lot of times make their own Google Sheet just to literally make like, this is a prospect's name. And this is like what I talked to them. And then they'll make a new tab for like, this is the next conversation I had with them and put their notes there. So, so you have reps that just literally work in their own systems in some way. And that tends to be a Google Sheet. And they might, mark them like hot or warm or cold or something like that. And it's like, I get the initiative because they want to stay on top of their deals. And that's great. But why aren't we just making this a little bit, easier for them? And why I think there's a lot of disconnect. I look at things through a lot of different lenses, right? I have the tech background. I learned a lot of, strong leadership qualities, and I'm going to say I'm like the, all-time leader in leadership or anything like that. But I learned a lot of strong leadership qualities. I learned a lot in marketing and how that works and sales and how that works. And usually what I find is that if somebody's going to build a system for a sales team, it's going to be someone that does, more tech-based stuff. Right. And they don't take the sales process into consideration. And then it's just like, okay, now sales manager, this is how you use the new system. Now train everybody to use the system. That's a huge issue because all these things are separated. And this is the problem I have with a lot of AI tools too. I think a lot of these softwares that are created with AI now are created by people that aren't industry specific. They're just seeing an opportunity for a tool. You have no idea what the prompting is behind the scenes. how this works, right? You created a way for this podcast to grade you and give you feedback, and you like that because you know what you want out of these episodes. Now, if some random team created a software to do that, a bunch of people would sign up for it. Now, how well would it be created? Who created it? Do they have podcasting experience? Was it just they saw a need because they showed up on a couple podcasts, right? Like, I wouldn't be qualified to do that. Could I build it? Sure. Am I qualified to build it? No, absolutely not, right? So I think it comes into the level, and that's I think one of the scary things of AI is you can get a lot of bad responses from it if you don't know how to use it in the right way. So I think that we're getting to a point now where people in their roles are going to learn how to use AI more and more, which is a necessity. And that's going to drive a lot of change within how jobs are being used and done. I think that enablement is really, really important. So I think having somebody that you can trust that actually knows not just how to use AI or how to create a system for people to do things, but like, what's the actual, sales behind it? Like, what's the prompting that goes behind it? Do they actually understand that from a sales coaching point? And then also, do they know how salespeople like to work or don't like to work? Because that's also a huge point. And that's been a problem forever. Like, AI aside, I that's been a problem, right? And that's why SaaS companies if they survive a long time, they usually have pretty good feedback loops. They have usually good, feature requests, and they have ways for the community to interact, even if that's just like a Facebook group or something like that. And that can become very popular and very helpful for a software to really get, an advantage over its competitors just by actually like doing a lot of communication with folks. I think that sales, just teams in general, not sales aside, because, I've worked in marketing, I've done ops stuff. They just create something that they say this needs to be done, and now we're going to tell you to do it. That's not good from a leadership side, and it's not good from a actual adoption side, right? It just you annoy people, and then is the adoption even going to happen? Should it be happening in that way? Is that going to make them more efficient? In theory, maybe, but if they don't like it and they don't want to do it, try and get your kid to do something that they don't like and they don't want to do. Right. At some point, like you can force it for so long, but at some point there's going to be a breaking point. And I think parenting teaches probably some of the best leadership that you can do, because it sure humbles you as shit at times. But
agreed. Yes.
Sorry for the language. I hope that's okay on this show. But that's that is the I think the biggest thing when you're thinking about how all this flows and works together. I try to remember of, who I am in this situation and who I need to be for this team in order to help them succeed if I'm consulting with them. That means, talking to the team members, talking to the reps, not just being like, this is a system, this is how we're going to run it. I've run it before, I know what I'm doing. Listen up, we're going to work. All right. Maybe if I, was Warren Buffett, I could say something like that, but I'm not. I'm Stephen Werley. No one's heard of me. Right. So I need to actually listen and make sure what I'm doing is the right thing, right? Because
okay, so all right, we're talking about sales. We've been talking so far about follow-ups and why there needs to be a system for that, and kind of how to do that a little bit. Sell me, or the listeners, your service. Why? What do you offer that isn't already out there, and how do you differ from the other things that are out there?
Yeah, I, as much as a salesperson I am, I don't really like selling people too much. There's usually there's a problem how in conversion.
Yes, right. Yeah. What are the problems that your business solves?
Happy to answer it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to shy away from the question. It's just there's usually some problems that a business has, and it tends to be we feel like we could be doing better on the sales side, right? If that's where you are, that's where, I live a lot. Now, whether that's the true problem or not, I don't know, right? Because it could be something on the marketing side potentially. So until I actually look at it, like I don't know. And I tend to be pretty honest about this because I really have no intention of working with somebody if I don't feel like I can help them anyways, or if I just feel like we don't jive. Like I just at this point, I think we've all been there and whatnot. So what exists? I'll say that some CRM tools are starting to implement AI more, but not so much in the way I'm doing it. And I think that's a unique thing. I'm going to have more competitors in the next 6 months in terms of what I'm doing and the service I provide. And I'm sure somebody exists out there, or maybe they will just be willing to build like a N8N automation or something like that. But I haven't really seen anybody. And this is interesting because I reached out to someone the other day that I respect a lot in the marketing game, and they're excellent at the ad side and how they do it. And I, said like, hey, I would love to talk to you about some of the things I'm doing just because I feel like there's probably some synergy in the clients that we're working with, and we could probably, create some good stuff. Their immediate reaction, it wasn't taken in a bad light at all. I was just, they're saying like, well, I've really shifted and I do some CSO stuff and I brought on a partner and like we take a look at that sales process. I imagine you're doing some like chat bots and stuff like that, right? But that's not at all what I'm doing, right? A lot of people are doing that. I know like Go High Level has integrated the voice chat bots and the text responses and things like that. And that's kind of popularity. I don't really plan on living in that space. What I do is I help understand the data that's happening and then help your sales team use that data to make better decisions to close deals. So instead of, me advertising a 24-hour AI employee that can stay on top of these conversations, for me, it's more, how can we actually take everything that's happening in the CRM, make sure it's actually being tracked by the sales team, and help them follow up and close more deals. There is something around 150K that gets lost for every 100K that you close. There's this data point that was pulled from a Harvard MIT type of study. And, that right there speaks volumes. You're losing more deals by letting them just kind of slip away and ignore them versus not. And follow up isn't just, hey, did you see my last email? Hey, what do you think? Are you ready to move forward? Right? It's really intentional ways to communicate with somebody and give them what they're asking for, even if they didn't blatantly ask for it, but like they're in their subconscious what they're asking for and what they're portraying in their words. We can figure that out, or AI can help figure that out, and we can use AI to help build that stuff and give that to that person. That's what I build, right? And if you're a sales team that wants to become more efficient, and you have salespeople that are selling 30% of the day and you want them selling 80% of the day, so they stop thinking about what they need to do and just do it, that's what I do.
So then you get to position yourself as sort of a coach to help the sales team be better salesmen or women, or however, sales people. But then also you are coming in to help the business know what their numbers mean and how to follow up on those numbers so that nobody gets left behind.
Yep. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So Stephen, with AI, we have AI agents. I think that they are, you talked about like you got the chat bot that's on the most people's website. You got the chat bot, I guess, is the text message one that's acting like salesperson so and you're having that conversation with them. Okay, so I want to actually ask this question first. Do you think we've gotten to the point where the end user, the customer, the client on the other end, can tell that that's an AI, or has AI advanced to the point where, oh, this actually might be salesperson John? I don't know.
Yeah, I think most people know that's an AI. You're talking about voice-wise or text-wise?
Text-wise.
We're pretty close. I'll say we're pretty close. I think it depends on how well that's trained. If you're doing the bare minimum, it's pretty easy to spot that it's AI. But if you go through and, tell it exactly how to behave and remove things like M dashes and things like that. Could you pass the AI check? Probably the conversation's short enough. The longer the conversation goes, the less likely.
Well, and really that chatbot AI text message conversation, whatever you want to call that, is designed to get them to schedule a call to be on with a
Yeah,
real person. And so
correct.
ideally that is kind of narrows down how long the end user is interacting with that anyways.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So okay, so then all right, so then the question is, with all of those things, how can us as the humans move into the next level to become better by leveraging those things? So we have all of these other things at our disposal that are kind of pointing the end user to us in order to sell them better. We are getting better at our sales process because of services like what you have. We're getting trained
Sure.
on, okay, here's how I can improve. Here's how I can better overcome this objectives that I happen to get all the time. I just don't know the right answer to overcome it. So we get all of these feedbacks, all of these extra metrics and data that we get from AI. Are we at the point where us as the salespeople can actually improve? Like, do we know what that journey looks like, or are we kind of getting bombarded with all of this information and we don't necessarily know how to coalesce with it?
I think we can definitely improve at this point, right? So we can now, especially in like something like an important B2B deal where there's information about a company, about the person we're talking to, we can have talking points going into a call very quickly, right? We can get off that call and, maybe the next call happens, we get a prep sheet ready to go. An hour before that call, we can just look at that prep sheet. We don't have to take the time to re-listen to the entire call and put that together. This is a time saving endeavor and a potency endeavor as well, right? It makes us more efficient and consistent. And that is the joy of AI, right? That's the point of using it. It should never be a way to overwhelm. It should always be used as a way to simplify. AI should be the thing that takes the overwhelm and makes it very easy for us to understand and make a good sense of it. And that's what I'm trying to do. As many sales folks that I can AI enable, that's what I want to do. Whether they pay me or not, whether they just hear it here and they get some tips to have ChatGPT go review some calls, that's awesome. Like that's huge because I know no one's listening to every single one of their calls. And we all know how important it is to listen to some of our calls in order to improve. If we can run all of them through ChatGPT and then still listen to some of them, well, now we're doing a lot better, right? Right there, we're making a lot of improvements. So there's a lot of ways to get better. And I think AI makes our jobs a lot easier in that sense as a salesperson. We just have to be willing to use it and not. I think there's a lot of overwhelm because it's just, oh, like, how do we use it? Like, what are we going to do? Like, are we using it in the right way? Are we prompting in the right way? So a lot of it comes down to playing with it to start, and then you can get a lot better at it.
Okay, so I want to talk about some automations, but before I do that, circle back to given the AI, the kind of the transcript. The interesting thing then is for the business, they're sending all of those into ChatGPT. Okay, here's the feedback. If it gets below a certain percentage or a certain grade, however you want to do that, then there needs to be a conversation between the management team and that salesperson to have, okay, hey, what's going on here? You're not, I see that this happened, or however that goes. And then on the flip side of that, if they are consistently scoring high, then okay, if they're consistently scoring high, they're probably getting sales and they're going to be some sort of incentive that's going to happen anyways. But if they're consistently scoring high, then maybe they can be incentivized by, X, hey, you are consistently the top performer on your call reviews. Congratulations, you get 5% more, whatever the metric would be. But that would be something cool that could happen. And then the people who would normally have to listen to all of those calls, they wouldn't necessarily have to do that unless it falls below a certain threshold of whatever that is. Then there's a cause for intervention. Hey, we need to come in and step in. Hey, you're missing some marks. These are some things you need to do. And then you can improve those things because you can see the data on those.
Yeah, you're starting to get into a lot of the root of what I experienced as a sales manager, like all the reasons for doing this. I think, if anybody here probably more familiar with a role like a CMO, CMOs are always, I feel like, under a lot of heat, a lot of pressure. There's a lot of, turnover. A lot of them, work with a company for a few years, and then they, end up having to resign or something, and then they go with a different company, just because there's just so much pressure around them, marketing changing, whatever it is. In sales, I mean, it's like that, but it almost feels faster moving, right? Because like sales are down this month, we have to rebound next month. Oh, they're down again this month, like see ya, right? And it's like, well, what if there's a way to become better at this? And it takes me back when I was just using the custom GPT, and I was managing a remote team in an area, and we were having a really low show rate on an offer. It had dropped down well below 50%. And at the time, there wasn't good tracking between the way the team was doing it. We were kind of new coming on here, and there wasn't a good way to track like which prospects were showing and which ones weren't based on like the calls that were had. So I had to manually go through and look who showed, who didn't show, pull the recordings, transcribe them. And then I used my custom GPT to analyze and find the differences of the ones that showed and didn't show, and then rework the script with AI to optimize for a show rate. And we went from below 50% to 80% show rates within a week, right? Mm. So yes, when you think about, what does this do in terms of being able to, have thresholds for when somebody needs to step in and when they need to take action, when they need to do things. Absolutely. Like when does the human element come in, but also can the human element like use AI to help in what they're going to do and coach and adjust as well, right? Can if we see that somebody's not performing quite where we want them to be at, can we have AI pull out very specific, timestamps and word tracks and things that are being said, or, lack of understanding of what the prospect's saying and how that wasn't, used in the conversation at all to coach them, and make our job as managers easier as well. Yeah. I mean, that's literally what I did for myself. And that's where I am now. Right. Because that's where I'd like to help. Like where can all those areas be helped and analyzed and make that process smoother, because things are going to go wrong in a sales process, right? At some point, there's going to be something that isn't, done right, or sales are going to dip a little bit outside of just because it's that time of the year, whatever. That's normal. You're going to have fluctuations. How quick can we react to those fluctuations and figure out what's happening? AI can help us immensely with that. They can help us recover from those things very quickly. So I think that's, a huge thing. And I remember I was managing a team not that long ago, and I was out for like 3 weeks. And when I was out and I wasn't doing my normal thing, sales dipped considerably. I was on a family vacation, then going straight out to Colorado to prep for a 50-mile race. And I got back, and I was like analyzing all the things that happened. Then within a week, then the next month, highest month, right? And I think it's just being able to be consistent and know what needs to be done within those tools. And no one else was there, and that's a knowledge point. Make sure somebody else knows what to do in the case you need to disappear or whatever for a couple of weeks, because that was something that could have been avoided. The dip could have been avoided. So.
Okay. So if you have let's say there's a small business owner that's listening.
Sure.
Let's detail one, or give me an idea of one automation they can create or work on creating even today that would see a big impact in savings immediately.
Okay. When you say small business, can you just define that a little bit further? Are they like solopreneur? Are they managing a small team? Like
small
is it
team.
Typical small business you're saying?
Yeah,
cool.
Typical small business. They have a small team. They have, a unique clientele. Maybe it's a service business. We'll detail it even more.
Yeah. The thing that I would do is, one, form a meeting recorder that can interact with webhooks very easily. I think Otter does it. I know Read.ai does it. Something like that. And the benefit is that those tools, while they can give you some general summary at the end and some action items, are not necessarily trained in your sales process in your company, right? So if you can get the whole transcript and send it over to AI, that's huge. So, Read AI, what I, used to use a lot of, it would send a webhook and I could catch that and make and do whatever I want with it with AI and analyze the call and create follow-up. So most simple, highest impact thing I would do that doesn't take a lot of time. That if you have a VA or you're somewhat technical yourself, you could probably create it in an hour, 2 hours, maybe tops, is get that transcript, send it to AI, analyze it specifically around your company and, understanding your products and services, have it provide feedback for that call and have it provide suggested next follow-up actions that are, highly specific based on things in the conversation. That would be one major win that, anyone can enact.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay, Steve.
And if you don't have the skill set to do the automation, create a custom GPT quick, and then paste the transcript in, and so you're spending 5 minutes after every call doing that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is you could do is if you are not good at creating whatever that would look like, just tell AI what you want to do. Say make a prompt that I can copy and paste into another chat GPT to do X, and then you iterate on it. Okay, nope, it didn't do this right. What do I have to change in the initial prompt for this to happen? And then you have it fix itself for you, which is most people they miss over that, but it's so helpful to have it fix itself. Like, hey, you missed this part. You didn't do this right. What do I have to change in order for you to do that? Or just say, hey, from now on, do this every time I say do that.
Exactly. Yeah. I've gotten that too in my own. I've, for some complex automations and stuff, like I said, I don't like coding very much anymore. And if I'm doing something, managing with a script or something like that, I use AI to help me. And if it doesn't work, I just ask it to fix it.
Yes.
Show it the error and, move on.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stephen, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much. You showed me how discipline and technology can work together to change how we grow and think about our businesses. We talked about, why most people don't actually have a lead problem. They have a problem with being able to follow up with those leads that they already have and have a system in place to actually do that. We dug into a little bit about how AI agents are helping to transform sales system and how pairing that human connection with the automation is the real advantage. And Stephen, as we're wrapping up here, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways you would like to leave the listeners with? And if they wanted to get in contact with you to learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate the time, Chris. I think the conversation was really solid. I think these conversations just need to keep being had, and it's great to be able to do it. So thanks for having me on. In terms of any sort of takeaways, I would say just take a step and try it out, right? Just try it out with one of your transcripts after this call. So instead of sitting around thinking like, hey, a lot of good ideas being said there, go take a transcript and have AI, even if it's quick and you don't have the perfect prompt worked out. Just have it review it and give you some next steps for, all the calls that have happened within the past, 3 days for you. And if you do that and you create next action items and next action steps, your sales process is going to be improved right then and there. With that said, happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. Stephen Werley, I'm easy to find. It's Stephen with a V. Sure, that's in the show notes. And you can catch me on my website too, closable.ai. Easy to schedule a call and get in contact there. So yeah, appreciate
Wonderful.
you having me on, Chris. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Stephen, again, thank you. And listeners, if you found today's episode valuable, share it with a business owner or sales leader who you think could use these insights. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join our newsletter for more tools to master growth and mindset. Until next time, keep sharpening your system and your discipline.